up today is how to build a curved turnout. And this is how not to build a curved turnout. The first step, which I didn't do here, which is why this is now trash, is to print out the template. The template I'm using is from Fast Tracks. And when I printed it out, I didn't read the instructions here, which clearly say to make sure that you print it with all sizing off. So when I look at this, it says it's supposed to be 1 inch. When I measure it, it's exactly 1 inch. Like I couldn't get any closer if I tried. Whereas with this one, I printed it and it's sized to sheet, and the inch works out to 1.16 inches. And you can see in here where that's the right gap and that's way too wide. So it took me a couple hours to figure that out. So first step is to do that. Next step, I'm going to cut this out. And then I'm going to tape it to here. I've already been using this for regular turnouts, but I'm just going to tape it on top. I'll show you why I'm going to do that. The second thing I'm going to do is I want to extend these curves a little bit more. So in order to do that, I'm going to take a second sheet here. I printed multiples, and I'm going to cut right along the rail there and use that to extend these guys around so I can make this corner a little bit bigger. This is a number 8 turnout with an external radius of 16 inches and an internal radius of 12 inches. So I'm off to cutting. Alright, so I've gotten to the next step. I've cut out my template, and then after cutting it out, I have a cutout one that looks like this, and then by laying this down on here and sketching out and down on here and here, and anyway, by tracing out all the lines using a pencil, I've extended this end, and these ends. The black marks here are similar to the gray marks here in that they indicate where a PCB tie will go, and the lighter marks are just for wood ties. I've done a little squiggle here in blue to say this is how long I want to build it. Did the measurements. When I do the measurements, I need 8.5 inches, 5 3/4 inches, 2.5 inches, and 7/8 inches for the stock, point rail, frog, and guard. Now if you take all of that and double it, because you need one for each side, and do the math, it all comes out to 35.5 inches. And seeing as a long length of rail is 36 inches, that gives me 1/2 inch to play with to size things up. So one length of rail should work perfectly. Now next up, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to use some masking tape and put it on here. And then I'll get my rail ready, get my PCB board ties ready, and we'll show you how I proceed from there. But next up is just get some masking tape on this and tape it down. Okay, so here it's nicely attached. The other thing I do is I'm going to take a sheet of regular paper towel. I like using this because now I can just pull on this to move it back and forth. Incidentally, this is plate glass that it's mounted on. It's pretty cheap. Go down to any glass store or tell them to cut you some, and they'll do that. Two kinds of PCB ties. There's the long ones, which are used for most of these, and then there's the shorter ones, which are used for the end pieces. So now I'm going to cut these off, and to cut them off, all I have is a pair of edge cutters. And for example, for these guys, we'll just go in and we'll go cut, 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 cut. There's a bunch of those cut off. And then on here, I will superimpose them on there. And I'll use a scribe, which I have here, just to... I'm trying to show you that again. Okay, so I line that up right on the drawing. I use a scribe here to say there's the end. Plus on this one, I know I need to gap it, and there's on the drawing it shows where to gap it, so I mark, in this case, the 3 areas for gapping. So now when I pull this off, I look at my first mark, I go ahead and cut that. I have a piece of 1x2 here that I've taken and put a groove in right here so that that'll fit in, and I have a triangle file, and all I do is go back to where I made that mark with the scribe and wrong groove. Got grooves in a couple of spots here. Putting the little groove in the wood there holds the wood, so now with the scribe I can go in and give a couple of passes. That'll cut through the end of the PCB board so that it can't conduct across that. And the boards have to be gapped for this, otherwise you'll get a dead short. And then the final thing I do with a tie is I take a file and I rub it along once or twice on each side, get it nice and shiny. And this one on the edge, we'll do the same thing on the back and on the other edge. So I'll end up doing that for all of these ties along here. For the end ties, which are the black marks there, when I cut them, similar kind of process, except these, as you can see, are pre-gapped, so I don't have to worry about gapping them. All I need to do is go in and make sure they're clean. The reason you want to do the cleaning on these guys is to make sure that the solder will flow appropriately. So that's one of those guys done. And now I'm going to go and do all the rest. Okay, I've cut out all of the PCB board ties that I need. I've done the gapping on them. They're all sized appropriately. I've even got the throw bar tie, although I won't be using that for later. Next thing we have to do is we have to somehow attach these to the paper. And I've seen people use various methods of doing it. The one that I tried here on this attempt that failed, but only because I screwed up. And you can see what one of the reasons I used the glue I did, it just pulls off of there. And the glue that I'm using is Woodland Scenic Foam Tack Glue. I use this for a lot of stuff. It sets up pretty quick, and all I do is I put a little onto something that I can use to spread it with, and don't need very much glue. Then what I do is grab PCB board tie, and I have my special applicator here, a popsicle stick, which I just keep cutting off whenever I use it. And then I put a couple of dabs of glue on either side, and then I just line it up here to where I want it on the paper. Make sure it's lined up the way I want. And if you need something else, this here is a bamboo cooking skewer that I cut up. It's wood, so it won't. Yeah. Anyway, so now that's the first one in. I'll grab the next one, and again, just a little bit of dab of glue on each side there. Put this down where it belongs. I'll grab the little bamboo thing to kind of tap it in place a bit. A little bit of pressure on this and it sets up right away. Okay, now I'm not going to put in the throw bar, that's for later. Grab the next one. And a couple of little dollops of glue. Put it where I want it, at the angle I want it. I can still position it a little bit. Press it in. Now when I get down to the big guys here, because there's a lot more surface area, I'll do dollop, dollop, dollop. But I don't think you're all that keen on watching me do the rest of these, so I'll get them done and be back. We're all glued in there. Now we have to wait for that to dry. You can see from here, I used very little glue. Maybe someday I'll learn I don't have to squeeze so much out of the bottle. So it doesn't take much. Now I want that to set, and that won't take very long. An hour? Yeah, anyway, it goes from white to clear. I don't know how well things can be seen here, but if you look around some of these, you'll see that it's still a bit white, and that'll just dry clear later. And you've seen on that other sheet how I can peel them off. So now that that's like that, what I can do is use my sheet, pull everything out of the way so it will dry, go up here and grab my rail. Okay, and I have 36 inches sections of Microengineering Code 55 rail. Bought a fair chunk of that. And based on the calculations that I did here, I'm going to cut that rail. And I'll just show you the first cut is going to be 8.5 inches. So I'll grab my Xeron nail rail nippers, and yeah, you can just see it. So this cutting mat has a scale on it. So we go from 0 to 8.5. And I just position the rail nippers there, then slide them down a little bit. And that's that cut. Now this end, because the way rail nippers work, of course, I have to cut just a tiny bit off in order to square that up. So that's what a tiny bit looks like, somewhere in there. Now the other thing I like to do is I like to square up all my rails. So on this one that I just cut, I'll double check this is the end that was a good end. Just file it so it's nice and square. This end, you probably can't see, but I'll hold it there anyway. When the rail nippers go through, they leave a little bit of a ridge. And so I just go through with the file that off. Yeah, and I'm OCD on this one. So I then take another file that will fit just in the web, give it a couple of strokes each way, because through filing you often get a bit of a burr, and then do a final. Yep, that all feels good. So I'll do that to all of the rails.